It was 11:40 at night. Someone knocked on my shop door. The person outside knocked in this rhythm. 3 knocks, a pause, 3 more. I got up to open the door. The night wind rushed in, carrying the chill of late autumn. Standing at the door was a man in his 50s. He wore a dark jacket. His hair was gray. The wrinkles on his face were carved deep like knife cuts. His eyes were bloodshot. In his hand he carried a rectangular object wrapped in black cloth. "Are you Wu Xie?" he asked. "I am. Old Zhang sent me. He said you handle some special stuff." "I know, Old Zhang. He was an old-timer bomb tech in the bureau. He spent his whole career defusing bombs. Before retiring, he was the captain of the EOD squad. He came to me a few times. Always to burn paper money for his retired war buddies. For simple jobs like blowing up civilian houses. Someone Old Zhang personally recommended. This was no small thing. Come in. Talk." The man came in and sat down on a chair. He didn't drink any water. No small talk. He just pulled off the black cloth. Under the black cloth was a chest plate. The chest armor plate from a bomb suit. Thick dark gray Kevlar material. The surface had several deep scratches and burn marks. But that wasn't what caught my eye first. It was the 3 dents right in the center of the chest plate. They were arranged in an irregular triangle. Each dent was as big as an adult's fist. Over 2 centimeters deep. The Kevlar fibers at the edges were curled inward from the blast wave. Like a giant fist had punched it 3 times hard from the outside. No, not punches. There were marks where the blast pressure pushed something from behind the armor. In other words, those 3 dents matched the shape of the sternum, ribs, and collarbone of the person wearing that bomb suit. I reached out and pressed my hand on the dents. What I felt wasn't the rough texture of Kevlar. It was something indescribable. A faint vibration like a pulse. 1, 2, 3. Long intervals. Much slower than a normal person's heartbeat. Maybe only a dozen beats per minute. And there was a strange rhythm to the vibration. It's not even. It has a fixed pattern. Weak, weak. Strong. Pause. Weak, weak. Strong. Pause. I've seen this pattern before. It's like the second hand on an old mechanical timer. That's the exact rhythm. Weak, weak. Strong. That's when the gear clicks after 3 seconds on the clock. A slight acceleration. "This is Old Zhao's bomb suit," the man said. His voice was raspy, like sandpaper scraping. "He died 10 years ago. My name is Sandai Yang. I worked with Old Zhao on the same bomb disposal team for 8 years. Old Zhao, Zhao Jianmin. I've heard that name before. 10 years ago, he was the biggest martyr in bomb disposal. Awarded first-class merit. Posthumously granted martyr status. His memorial photo made the front page of every newspaper in the city. Over 3,000 bomb disposal missions, never a mistake. In the end he died on a homemade bomb. Since he was named a martyr, I said his stuff should have been taken care of a long time ago. Why is it still with you?" Sandai Yang pulled out his phone from his pocket, scrolled to a video and handed it to me. The video is surveillance footage of a warehouse. Black and white. No sound. The shot shows a warehouse filled with metal racks and equipment. In the center is a metal rack with wheels. A complete bomb suit is hanging on the rack. The helmet is at the top. Below it is the chest plate. Below that are the crotch and legs. The whole suit is hung in order. Like a soldier with no body standing guard. For the first 10 seconds, nothing happens. Then the bomb suit moves. Its helmet first turns to the left a little. Pauses for 2 seconds. Then turns to the right a little. Like someone's inside, turning their head to check the surroundings. Then the whole upper body starts leaning forward. It stands up from the rack. Not sliding off. Not tipping over. It's a controlled slow rising motion. Slow and controlled rise from the 2-body posture. First, the shoulders left the rack. Then the waist. Then the legs. The whole sequence took almost 5 seconds. It was steady, not like something lifeless at all. Once he stood up straight. He paused there for about 2 seconds. Then he took the first step. The bomb suit has a very distinct walk. The whole suit weighs over 40 pounds. Plus the helmet and chest plate are unevenly balanced. When a person wears it, they lean forward slightly. The steps are short. And the landings are heavy. In the surveillance footage, the bomb suit's walk matched perfectly with how a real person walks in it. Lean forward. Short steps. A heavy thud with each step. Even though there's no audio, I could feel that weight just from the picture. He walked to the center of the warehouse and stopped. Then he slowly crouched down, like someone was controlling him from inside. The movements were smooth, not mechanical at all. Once he was stable, he extended both hands forward. His left hand stayed in one spot. His right hand reached out carefully. His thumb and index finger made a pinching motion. Pinch. Pause. He gave his right wrist a slight twist. Snip. Pause. His left hand didn't move. He brought his right hand back, then reached out again. Pinched another spot. Pause. Snip. Over and over. After every snip, his body gave a little jolt, like he got hit by something. Then he'd pause for a second and start over from the beginning. The video was a little over 4 minutes. He repeated the same motion 5 times. Then he stood up, turned and walked back to the metal rack, faced it, and stood still. His body leaned forward slightly. Then he hung back in the original spot. Helmet back in place. Chest plate back in place. The whole set returned to how it looked at the start. Completely still. There was no one else the entire time. This is last month's surveillance. San Daiyang said. Every night at midnight, it starts right on time. It ends at 3 in the morning sharp. It's been like this for 3 years straight. We've moved through 3 warehouses. From the old supply room at the city bureau to the backup station in the east suburbs, then to the training base up north. Every time we moved, we locked that bomb suit in an iron cabinet, wrapped it with chains, and covered it with a tarp. But no matter where we moved it, at midnight that night, it'd come out of the cabinet by itself, walk out to the open space and start cutting. Ever think about burning it? We tried. Hit it with a torch at 2000 degrees for half an hour. The outer fabric burned right off, but the Kevlar and steel plates inside were fine. And the creepiest part? Next morning it showed up back in the warehouse looking brand new, not even smelling of smoke. Did you bring anyone in to deal with it? We did. A Taoist priest did 3 rituals, a Buddhist monk chanted for 2 days, and a bunch of feng shui masters, one yin-yang practitioner after another. Let's not even get into whether it helped or not. One Taoist priest came, didn't even step inside, just stood outside the warehouse and took one look, went pale as a ghost, turned around and walked away, left his ritual tools behind. Another one was way crazier. He performed rituals for 2 hours, then passed out cold. When he woke up, he said, "I can't mess with this thing." Bought a train ticket and left that same night. When Sandayang got to this point, his voice dropped low, like a bamboo pole bent way down, finally making that sound right before it snaps. Old Zhao said, "The day my master left, I was right downstairs. I couldn't go up to help him. For the past 10 years, every night before I go to sleep, I think, what if I had gone up, even just to hand him a pair of pliers? Would the outcome have been different?" I looked at his hands, rough and calloused. Short, thick fingers. Knobby knuckles. Hands that worked with tools day in and day out. An EOD operator's hands. "Leave the stuff here." I said, "I'll take the job. But I have one condition." "What condition?" "I need to find 2 people. Old Zhao wasn't the only one hurt in that explosion 10 years ago. 2 young officers got injured too. They should still be alive. I want their contact info." Song Daeyang was caught off guard. Song Yang and Liu Dongsheng. "What do you want with them?" "To cut the wire for Old Zhao." "About Old Zhao." I checked the files overnight. The next morning, Sandayang brought me a thick craft paper envelope. Inside were copies of the case files from 10 years ago, along with the personal info of Song Yang and Liu Dongsheng. He had clearly put a lot of effort into this. Some documents still had the red confidential stamp on them. I brewed a cup of strong tea and read through the whole thing. At 2:15 p.m. on July 19, 10 years ago, the police command center got a call. Suspected explosives found in an abandoned factory on the east side of town. 3 hostages were taken. The suspect had a homemade bomb. When Old Zhao and his EOD team arrived at the scene, The negotiators who got there first had already been in a standoff with the suspect for almost an hour. The building wasn't complicated. Single story, about 2,000 square feet. Inside it was packed with old abandoned machinery. The suspect was hiding in the far corner. The 3 hostages were tied to a concrete pillar 5 yards away from him. There were 6 explosive devices in total, connected by wires to the same detonation system. They were placed in different spots around the building, forming an explosive network covering most of the factory floor. Old Zhao spent almost 4 hours disarming the first 5. Every time he disabled one, he had to lie on the ground, slip a borescope through the gaps in the machinery, and slowly study the internal structure bit by bit, checking the path and function of every wire. The temperature inside the factory was over 100 degrees. The bomb suit is airtight. After 4 hours, he lost over 4.5 pounds of water. He came out to rest twice. Each time he took off his helmet first, downed a bottle of water, then said, "I'm fine," and went back in. The 6th device was hidden inside an old washing machine. The suspect had welded the machine's metal shell shut, leaving only a fist-size access port. An endoscope went through the port, and the screen showed a ridiculously complex circuit board. Red, yellow, blue, green wires were all tangled together, like a knotted ball of yarn. Lao Zhao watched for 20 minutes. He used his tool to push aside the surface wires, tracing each one's path one by one. He drew 3 pages of circuit diagrams. Finally, he locked onto that blue wire. He reported to command over the radio. Ready to cut. Behind him, Song Yang held the signal line, shining a light for him. Up on the 2nd floor, Liu Dongsheng watched for any movement outside, in case the suspect's partner tried a sneak attack from behind. Lao Zhao pinched that blue wire. What happened next? The case file wrote very restrained, but I could read the horror of that afternoon between every line. The moment the scissors closed, the bomb went off. It wasn't that he cut the wrong wire. Inside the blue wire's insulation, there was a copper strand thinner than a hair. That strand was the 2nd detonation circuit. Independent of the main circuit, no standard bomb disposal method could detect it. The suspect was a former researcher who knew electronic engineering. He taught himself bomb making in prison. After getting out, he spent a whole year designing this trap. Lao Zhao died on the spot. Song Yang was thrown back by the shockwave, perforated his left eardrum, and lost all hearing in his right ear. He can barely hear with a hearing aid to this day. Liu Dongsheng fell from the 2nd floor, suffering a compression fracture of his spine. He had 2 major surgeries to save his legs, but he'll always walk with a slight limp. The last page of the case file attached a summary of the technical report's conclusion. It read, "Bomb disposal operator Zhao Jianmin's procedure fully complied with regulations. The decision to cut the wire was correct. The device used an unconventional dual detonation design. No operator under the same conditions could have prevented the explosion." In other words, it wasn't Lao Zhao's fault, but the report was written by people, and a person's soul doesn't read reports. Old Zhao's soul was trapped in that moment when the scissors closed. In his perception, he cut the wire, but the bomb went off. That contradiction couldn't be resolved, so he kept going back to that moment over and over, rechecking, rethinking, recutting the wire. He didn't know the bomb went off because of a trap. He only knew that his own action caused the failure, so he couldn't leave. He had to cut that wire. For real. Completely. So the bomb wouldn't blow. But that wire was already cut. It snapped the moment he cut it. The bomb didn't blow because he cut the wrong wire. It was because there was another wire he couldn't see. I had to make him see that invisible wire. The next morning, I went to the development zone. Song Yang worked as a security guard at a factory on the outskirts. The factory mainly made car parts. The yard wasn't big. The guard shack was a tiny 10-square-foot metal building. When I got there, Song Yang was sitting in the guard shack, watching the security monitors. He was wearing a faded security uniform. His hair was buzzed short, revealing a faint scar on his scalp. That was from a piece of shrapnel 10 years ago. I tapped on the window. He turned his head. His eyes landed on my face first. And then he instinctively tilted his head, turning his left ear toward me. His right ear was completely deaf. That was the only way he could hear anything. Now getting to this part of the story, I want to recommend a treasure app to you. It's called Douyin Select. Douyin Select has not only lots of awesome suspense stories, but also high-quality science videos and really relaxing wilderness content. Every video on Douyin Select is a hidden gem. Song Yang, it's me. Who are you? Someone sent me here. About Zhao Jianmin. His expression changed. It wasn't surprise, not fear. It was something deep, like someone reopening an old wound. He slowly took off the hearing aid from his left ear, wiped it with the corner of his shirt, and put it back on, slowly. It was like he needed time to process what I said. What do you do? He asked. I deal with some unclean stuff. He looked at me for a few seconds, then stood up, opened the door of the guard shack, and let me in. He walked over to the metal cabinet. He pulled out an enamel cup and poured me a glass of water. The water was cold. There was a layer of tea stain at the bottom of the cup. You could tell he'd been drinking from that cup for years. Old Zhao's was, he said quietly. But every word was clear, like he was trying hard to control his emotion. 10 years. I've been wanting to find him, to say, I'm sorry. Why sorry? Song Yan was silent for a long time. The guard shack only had the hum of the monitor screens and the machinery rumbling from the factory. He turned his hearing aid up another notch, like it would give him the courage to say what came next. That day I was right behind him. The bomb was strapped to his body. I was behind him holding the signal line, handing him tools. When he was cutting the wires, my hand was right next to his shoulder. When it exploded, I felt this huge force shove me backwards. Then I didn't know anything. When I woke up, old Zhao he didn't finish. His right hand made an involuntary motion. Fingers spread wide, like he was grabbing something in the air, then clenched tight all of a sudden. I should have yelled. I saw the moment his scissors closed. His right hand twitched. If I could have yelled, stop, maybe he would have stopped and looked again. Maybe he'd have spotted that hidden wire. Maybe it wouldn't have blown. That twitch wasn't his hand shaking. I said it was the shockwave starting to travel before the blast. You yelling wouldn't have helped, 'cause sound doesn't travel faster than a shockwave. Song Yang watched my lips move a few times, but no sound came out. He lowered his head, stared at his own calloused hand, for a long time. I know what he finally said, but I still think I should have yelled. I've heard that line way too many times. From people who lost their bodies in accidents. From family who couldn't save their loved ones. Logically, they know it's not their fault. Emotionally, they'll never get past that hurdle. I don't need you to convince yourself it wasn't your fault. I said I need you to do me a favor. Tonight, you're coming with me somewhere. In front of old Zhao. Say the things you've wanted to say for 10 years but couldn't. Song Yang looked up. Where are you going? To the place he's at now. He didn't ask why. He didn't ask how to get there. He didn't ask what he'd see when he got there. He stood up, walked over to the metal cabinet in the corner of the guard room, unlocked it, pulled something out from inside. An old police thermos. The badge on it was worn down so you could barely see it. Old Zhao's. He said the night before the incident. He used this cup to pour me a glass of water. Said, Xiao Song, tomorrow's mission is a bit tricky. Stick close to me. I've used it for 10 years. Never switched it out. 7 in the evening. I waited for Liu Dangsheng at the door of the accident archives room. He was a few years younger than Song Yang, but he looked more worn out. After his spine injury, his right leg would kick out a bit when he walked. You wouldn't notice if you weren't paying close attention. But he was really self-conscious about it. He always subconsciously reached for a wall or a table for support. He was wearing a dark blue jacket, with a tiny police badge pin on the collar. The old school kind. Hardly anyone wears those anymore. San Beiyang called me. Liu Dongsheng said. He said you let old Zhao rest in peace. I can't promise I'll succeed, but I'll do my best. Liu Dongsheng nodded. His expression was a lot calmer than Song Yang's. But that calm wasn't relief. It was the kind of calm where you seal yourself under a layer of ice so tight you can't breathe. Back then, I was on the second floor watching the perimeter of the factory. Old Zhao was disarming the bomb on the first floor. I was about 10-15 feet away from him, with one floor between us. When it blew, the blast threw me out the second floor window.
I landed on the concrete outside.
When I came to, I was already in the hospital. I couldn't make it to Old Zhao's memorial service because I was having surgery. He paused, then kept talking. I went to see his grave later. 3 times. Every time I stood in front of the headstone. Wanted to say something, but I couldn't open my mouth. I feel like I don't deserve to talk to him. While he was fighting for his life down there, I was up here, doing nothing. You were up there handling perimeter security. That was your post, I said. Your post wasn't by his side. I know Liu Dongsheng's voice was soft, but if I'd bent the job a little, gone down to watch his back, maybe he could have finished the job faster. Maybe he could have gotten out before the blast. Again, maybe each. Maybe it's a thorn stuck in the hearts of those still alive, stuck there for 10 years. Tonight, you're coming with me somewhere, I said. You don't need to say what you think you did wrong. Just what you saw, what you remember about Old Zhao. Tell it exactly as it was. Liu Dongsheng looked at me. There was a shimmer in his eyes. He didn't nod, and he didn't shake his head. He just shoved his hands into his jacket pocket and clenched something tight. At 10:30 at night, the 3 of us met at the warehouse door. The warehouse was in the corner of the old city bureau compound, a standalone little 1-story building. Sheet metal door. Windows bricked up solid. Old Zhang gave me the key ahead of time. When he got there, he stood by the door and smoked a cigarette, then stubbed it out on the ground, patted Sang Daiyang on the shoulder, and didn't follow us in. I'll wait outside for you guys. He said, call me if you need anything. I pushed open the sheet metal door and flicked on the fluorescent light. The tube flickered a few times before it steadied, spilling a sickly white light over the iron racks stacked with gear, making the whole warehouse look like a morgue. That bomb suit hung on the rack in the back, its dark gray Kevlar fabric dull and glossy under the light. 3 clear dents on the chest plate. The helmet's visor faced the door, and on the curved glass reflected the shadows of the 3 of us. Song Yang stood on the left, Liu Dongsheng in the middle, and me on the right, our 3 shadows warped by the curved visor. It was twisted, stretched and deformed, like 3 black candles twisted together in a Y shape. Song Yang's eyes locked onto that uniform. His throat moved. He swallowed hard. Liu Dongsheng turned his head away. He wouldn't look straight at him. I crouched down, opened my bag, and started pulling stuff out. The paper offerings for tonight weren't complicated, but everything had to be perfect. First, I made a paper figure, same size as a real person, right knee to body ratio. The frame was made from thin bamboo strips, and the body was covered in thick yellow paper. I purposely made the figure's clothes look like the uniform. On dark gray paper, I painted Kevlar weave patterns with ink. On the chest, I wrote a serial number in gold powder. It was Old Zhao's old number. The helmet was a half sphere made of paper, and I taped a piece of clear plastic where the visor goes. I remade the paper figure's right hand twice. First try was too loose, couldn't hold anything. Second try was too tight, like it was making a fist. On the third try, I adjusted the angle of each finger, made it slightly curved, like it was holding something. This pose was important, because Old Zhao's soul keeps itself grounded by the motion of cutting a line. If the figure's hand was wrong, he might not recognize it. After finishing the figure, I started on the second item, a pair of scissors. These couldn't just be folded together. I used the stiffest cardboard for the blades, wrapped them in silver foil. The tips had to be sharp, and they had to close perfectly. On the handles, I drew a breaking charm with cinnabar. Not the kind that chases away ghosts. It was a charm that breaks nets. It lets a soul trapped in an illusion see what's real. After the scissors were done, I placed them next to the figure's right hand, so the fingers just touched the handle. Everything was set. I checked my watch. It was 11:55. You two stand over there. I pointed to the middle of the warehouse. Stand right under the fluorescent light. Don't move. Don't talk. When I light the paper doll, you guys start talking. Say the things you told me today. No rehearsing. Just say whatever comes to mind. Only the truth. Song Yang and Liu Dongsheng looked at each other. then stood side by side under the fluorescent light. They stood close together, shoulders almost touching, like two people huddling for warmth in a blizzard. 11:59. I turned off the lights. The warehouse went completely dark. Not the usual kind of dark. The kind where you can't even see your hand in front of your face. But my ears caught movement from deep inside the warehouse. The metal rack made a sound. Very soft, like metal slowly bending. Then the rustle of fabric. The sound of the 40+ pound costume sliding off the rack. Thud. One foot hit the ground. Thud. The other foot hit the ground. Footsteps started moving. Step 1. Step 2. Step 3. Each step was solid, clear and precise. The footsteps stopped in the center of the warehouse and came to a halt. The fluorescent light suddenly turned on by itself. Under the harsh white light, the costume stood less than 6 feet in front of Song Yang and Liu Dangsheng. It looked bigger than when it was hanging on the rack, because it was standing, not hanging. The helmet tilted slightly downward, visor facing the ground. The 3 dents on its chest cast deep shadows in the light. It crouched down. Left hand reached out, fixed on something invisible. Right hand extended forward. Thumb and index finger made a pinching motion. Pinched. Pause for 3 seconds. Wrist turned. Snip. Its body jerked violently, like it got hit by some force. In that jerk, the 40+ pound costume let out a dull thud, like a bell being struck. Then it started again. Left hand fixed. Right hand extended. Hinged. Pause for 3 seconds. Cut. Shake. Start over. I was crouched in the corner of the warehouse, watching that bomb suit repeat the same motion over and over. After each cut, that faint shake made my chest tighten. Not because I was scared, but because I could feel what was behind that shake. It wasn't pain. It was confusion. It was a person in the dark constantly checking if they did it right, failing over and over, starting over, endlessly. Old Zhao didn't know the bomb went off because the wire was tight. All he knew was he cut the wire, and it exploded. In his mind, if he cut the right wire, the explosion shouldn't have happened. But it did, so he mustn't cut the wrong one. That black and white logic was like a wall, trapping him in those 3 seconds before the blast. He couldn't get out, because the other side of the wall didn't give him an exit. I took a deep breath and lit the paper effigy. It burned faster than I expected. Flames shot up from its feet. The yellow paper curled in the fire, turned black, and peeled off, revealing the bamboo skeleton inside. When the fire reached its waist, the effigy's right hand started to move. It wasn't the paper burning. The bamboo was expanding from the heat, making the finger joints curl slightly. He grabbed the scissors. The moment he did, the bomb suit stopped moving. Its helmet lifted up, and the visor pointed toward the effigy. He stayed crouched, not moving. The air inside the helmet was heating up. A thin layer of fog formed on the inside of the visor. Song Yang, I whispered. Now. Song Yang opened his mouth. His voice was shaking, but he didn't pause. Captain Zhao. It's me, little Song. 10 years ago that day, when the bomb went off behind you, when I exploded behind you, I saw the scissors in your hand were already closed. You finished that move. You didn't mess up. Your hand didn't shake. It was the damn bomb that was faulty. He hit the second wire inside the line. You cut the main wire, but the second wire was still there. That wasn't something you could control. Captain Zhao, listen to me. It's not your fault. It was never your fault. By the last few words, his voice had completely cracked. Like he was crying. Like he was shouting too. He didn't wipe his tears. He just let them stream down his face, dripping onto the collar of his security uniform. Liu Dongsheng spoke up. His voice was steadier than Song Yang's, but every word felt like it was pulled from somewhere deep, deep down. Drenched. Heavy. Captain Zhao. This is Liu Dongsheng. I was on the floor above you. When the explosion happened, I fell out the window. By the time I woke up, everything was already over. I didn't make it to your side in time, but I went to the accident scene later. Your right hand was still holding the scissors. The blades were closed. You cut that wire. Mission accomplished, Captain. Zhao, you can go now. We'll wrap it up for you. Don't worry. The costume's body suddenly went rigid. Then he did something nobody expected. He raised his right hand, held it up to the light, and slowly spread his fingers, palm facing up. Empty. He looked at his empty right hand. Then he lowered his head and looked at the pile of burning paper figures on the ground. The paper figure's right hand was still holding the scissors. The blades of the scissors were glowing red in the fire. But when his closed eyes, the bomb suit crouched down. He reached his right hand through the flames and grabbed those scissors. The fire instantly spread from the scissors to his right hand, then to his arm, then to his shoulder, then to his whole body. That 40-plus-pound bomb suit burned fiercely in the flames. But it wasn't the kind of passive burning where something gets destroyed. It was an active kind, like it was completing some kind of ritual. The 3 dents on the chest plate slowly bulged back up in the fire. The pressed-in Kevlar fibers snapped back to their original positions. The edges of the dents first softened, then rose up, and finally flattened out completely. The crack on the visor slowly closed up in the fire like a wound healing, and disappeared without a trace. The faded fabric turned back to deep blue. The badge on it shone bright in the fire, looking as new as it came out of the factory. What really grabbed your attention was his right hand. That hand held the scissors and slowly closed the blades. With a click, crisp and clean. No hesitation at all. The sound of these scissors cutting was different from before. Every time he cut before, no matter how hard he tried, there was no sound. Because he was cutting emptiness, illusions, things that can never be cut. But this time, the sound of the blades closing was real, like a good pair of scissors, snipping a thread that had been waiting a long time to be cut. It was cut. The bomb suit stood up straight. Not the stiff kind of straight, like something was propping it up, but a living person straight, with balance and feet planted on the ground. He stood there, his right hand still holding the scissors. But the way he held them had changed. Not that tense, ready to operate grip, but a relaxed one, like just casually holding them after finishing a job. He made a move. He lifted the scissors to the visor, looked at his reflection in it, and then gave a slight nod, like saying to himself, "All right, that's that." The flames went out in that instant, not slowly fading, but like someone flipped a switch. All the fires died at the same time. There was no smoke in the warehouse, no ashes, no burnt smell left. The floor was spotless, not even a trace of the paper figure remained. But one thing was left behind, right where the bomb suit had vanished. A brass button lay in the middle of the floor, the kind you'd see on a police uniform blackened by fire. But the words on it were still readable. The People's Police serve the people. Song Yang snapped out of it first. He staggered over, crouched down, and picked up the button. His hands were shaking bad. The button pulsed in his palm like a living heart. He clenched his fist. His knuckles went white. Then he loosened his grip, then clenched again. He did it over and over, like he was afraid it'd disappear. Liu Dongzheng walked up to him, put a hand on his shoulder. Neither of them said a word, but the way they stood said it all. Song Yang's shoulders were trembling violently. Liu Dongzheng's hand pressed down steady, like one tree holding up another. Footsteps came from outside the warehouse. Oh Zhang pushed the door open. He glanced at the empty floor, then at the bund in Song Yang's hand. He didn't say anything. He walked over, took the button from Song Yang's palm, turned it over a few times, and slipped it into his own breast pocket. He pressed it down. "Tomorrow," Oh Zhang said, "I'll go to Captain Zhao's place. I'll give this to his wife." The warehouse's fluorescent light didn't flicker anymore. I packed up my bag, picked up the stray scraps of paper off the floor, and walked to the warehouse door. I looked back. The metal rack was still there. The equipment was still there, but the bomb suit was gone. In its place, just a beam of moonlight coming through the vent slit. It slanted down onto the concrete floor. like a quiet, pale column of light. I closed the door, locked it shut. What happened later, San Taeyang told me. Old Zheng went to Zhao Jianmin's house the next day. Zhao Jianmin's wife is surnamed Wang. She works at the neighborhood office. Been retired for a few years now. When old Zheng handed him that button, he didn't cry. He just took the button, held it in his palm and looked at it for a long time. Then he set it into a photo frame. There was already a picture of Zhao Jianmin in that frame. A standard police photo, with the buttons on his uniform clean and shiny. They were the same kind as the one in the frame that was burned black. He put the frame on the TV cabinet in the living room, with a bunch of flowers next to it. Those were white chrysanthemums, Zhao Jianmin's favorite flowers when he was alive. Old Zheng, Aunt Wang said. Is old Zhao really gone this time? Old Zheng said. He's gone. Aunt Wang nodded, and poured him a cup of tea. Later San Taeyang told me something else. When the Bureau's archives were sorting through old files, they found an extra page in Zhao Jianmin's martyr file. There was a line of writing on the page. The handwriting was Zhao Jianmin's own. It said, I have confirmed the mission is complete, and I have no regrets. The borrowing record showed no one had checked out this file since it was archived 10 years ago. The person in charge of the files couldn't explain how that page got in there, so they just added a note, pending verification. San Taeyang said. He didn't verify it. Some things don't need verification. There was one more thing in the iron box. It wasn't the button, because the button was given to Aunt Wang. It was a small piece of tinfoil. It had peeled off the blade of that pair of straight scissors. It was burned down to just the size of a fingernail. But you could still see the silver. I put the tinfoil in the iron box, closed the lid, and shook it. Inside, it clinked and clanked like metal hitting metal. A military badge. A piece of metal. Tinfoil. Each thing stood for a soul that couldn't be let go. The copper bell in the shop rang again. I looked up at the door. The sunlight was great, and the stone slabs on the old street were bleached white from the sun. An old man in a police uniform walked past the doorway. His steps very steady, like he was walking to a rhythm he had stepped to countless times before. He didn't look back, but the moment he passed by, the copper bell gave a soft ring, like someone was saying hello to him. I looked down at the metal box, locked it up, and put it back in the drawer under the counter.